The Roman Empire had survived for centuries. It had crushed Carthage, conquered Greece, defeated mighty kingdoms from Britain to Mesopotamia. Rome was supposed to be eternal. But by the 3rd century, eternity suddenly looked very fragile. Welcome to Hero Biography, where legends and extraordinary individuals are brought to life through inspiring stories that help you learn, grow, and level up every day. Subscribe now so you don't miss out. The frontiers were collapsing. Emperors rose and fell in bloody coups. Entire legions betrayed Rome for ambitious generals. Plague ravaged the population. Trade collapsed. Inflation spiraled out of control. Barbarian tribes crossed the borders almost at will. And worst of all, the empire itself began to break apart. In the west, provinces separated from Rome and formed their own rival state. In the east, the wealthy city of Palmyra grew into an independent empire under the ambitious Queen Zenobia. For the first time in centuries, Rome was no longer one empire. It was dying. Across the Mediterranean, people whispered the same terrifying question. Was this the end of Rome? And then, out of the chaos, one man emerged. Not a philosopher, not a politician, not a noble born into luxury, but a hardened soldier. A man forged on the battlefield, a commander feared by enemies and respected by his troops. His name was Aurelian, and in less than 5 years, he would save the Roman Empire. The crisis of the 3rd century was unlike anything Rome had ever experienced. Between 235 and 284 AD, emperors came and went with terrifying speed. Many ruled only months before being assassinated by their own soldiers. Loyalty disappeared. Power belonged to whoever controlled the army. Some emperors never even reached Rome before being murdered. Civil war became normal. While Romans fought each other, enemies closed in from every direction. Germanic tribes flooded across the Rhine and Danube frontiers. Gothic raiders attacked deep into Roman territory. In the east, the mighty Sassanid Persian Empire humiliated Roman armies again and again. Then came one of the greatest disasters in Roman history. Emperor Valerian marched east to stop the Persians. Instead, he was captured alive. A Roman emperor, captured by a foreign king. For Romans, it was almost unimaginable. Persian artwork later showed Valerian kneeling before the Persian ruler Shapur-I. According to some accounts, the defeated emperor was used as a human footstool. Whether exaggerated or not, the psychological damage was catastrophic. Rome no longer looked invincible. The empire began to fracture under the pressure. In the west, the Gallic Empire broke away, controlling Gaul, Britain, and parts of Hispania. In the east, Palmyra became increasingly independent under its powerful queen, Zenobia. Rome was splitting apart like a cracked shield. And inside the empire, ordinary citizens suffered the most. Farms were burned, cities were abandoned, trade routes became dangerous, bandits roamed the countryside. People stopped believing the government could protect them. For many Romans, survival mattered more than loyalty to a distant emperor. The empire that once ruled the known world was becoming unrecognizable. Then Aurelian appeared. Aurelian was not born into greatness. Unlike earlier emperors from wealthy aristocratic families, Aurelian came from humble origins near the Danube frontier. The exact details of his early life remain uncertain, but one thing became clear quickly. He was made for war. The frontier regions of the empire were brutal places. Barbarian raids were constant. Soldiers lived hard lives. Survival depended on discipline, endurance, and violence. Aurelian thrived there. He rose through the military ranks through sheer ability. Roman soldiers respected strength above all else, and Aurelian had it in abundance. He became known for his toughness, his strict discipline, and his relentless aggression in battle. Some accounts claimed he was so fierce that even fellow soldiers feared him. But Rome needed men like that now. Gentle politicians could not save the empire anymore. Only warriors could. By the time Aurelian became emperor in 270 AD, the Roman Empire was already near collapse. His predecessor, Emperor Claudius Gothicus, had died suddenly after defeating Gothic invaders. The empire remained surrounded by enemies and weakened by internal division. Aurelian inherited chaos. Most men would have been overwhelmed. Aurelian attacked immediately. One of his first challenges came from the north. Germanic tribes crossed into Roman territory, raiding deep into Italy itself. That alone shocked Romans. For centuries, Italy had been considered untouchable. The empire's enemies fought on distant frontiers, far from Rome. Now barbarians marched across the homeland. Panic spread rapidly. Some Roman citizens fled their homes. Others believed the gods had abandoned Rome entirely. Aurelian moved fast. He gathered troops and confronted the invaders with ruthless efficiency. The battles were savage. These were not organized campaigns on clean battlefields. They were desperate fights for survival. Aurelian understood something many emperors had forgotten. Rome could no longer rely on reputation alone. Fear had to be restored, and so he fought with overwhelming brutality. Victory after victory slowly stabilized the situation. But Aurelian knew temporary battlefield success was not enough. Rome itself was vulnerable. For centuries, the capital had remained unwalled. Massive fortifications seemed unnecessary because enemies rarely came close enough to threaten the city. That illusion was gone forever. Aurelian made a decision that symbolized the terrifying reality of Rome's decline. He ordered the construction of enormous defensive walls around Rome itself, the Aurelian walls. Even today, parts of those walls still stand. For Romans, the message was chilling. If Rome needed walls, then Rome was afraid. Yet the walls also represented something else: determination. Aurelian was preparing Rome not just to survive the crisis, but to endure it. While the northern frontiers burned, the east presented an even greater danger. The Palmyrene Empire. Centered around the wealthy desert city of Palmyra, this breakaway state controlled Syria, Egypt, and much of the eastern provinces. Its ruler, Queen Zenobia, was intelligent, ambitious, and charismatic. She claimed descent from Cleopatra herself. Under her leadership, Palmyra transformed from a Roman client kingdom into a rival empire. And unlike many Roman enemies, Zenobia was successful. Her armies conquered territory rapidly. Her influence spread across the east. Many eastern provinces preferred Palmyrene stability over Roman chaos. By the time Aurelian took power, Zenobia effectively ruled an independent empire. If Rome could not reclaim the east, the empire might never recover. Aurelian understood the stakes immediately. He marched east. The campaign against Palmyra became one of the defining moments of Aurelian's reign. It was not simply a war between two armies. It was a battle for the survival of Roman unity itself. Aurelian moved with remarkable speed. His troops crossed dangerous terrain under brutal conditions. Supplies were difficult. Resistance remained constant. Yet the emperor drove his men relentlessly forward. City after city surrendered. Some resisted and were crushed. Aurelian combined military skill with psychological warfare. He offered mercy to cities that submitted peacefully but punished resistance severely. The strategy worked. Momentum shifted toward Rome. Then came the decisive confrontations against Zenobia's forces. Palmyra's cavalry was among the finest in the region. Their heavily armored horsemen posed a major threat to Roman troops. But Aurelian adapted brilliantly. During one battle, Roman cavalry deliberately feigned retreat under the desert heat. Palmyrene horsemen pursued aggressively, exhausting themselves in the process. Then the Romans countered it. The exhausted Palmyrene forces collapsed. It was classic Roman military adaptability. Zenobia retreated toward Palmyra itself. Aurelian followed. The siege that followed carried enormous symbolic weight. If Palmyra survived, Rome's fragmentation would continue. If Palmyra fell, reunification suddenly became possible. Eventually, Zenobia attempted to flee eastward toward Persia. She never made it. Roman forces captured her before she could escape. With Zenobia defeated, Palmyra surrendered. Aurelian had reclaimed the Eastern Empire. The impossible suddenly seemed achievable. Rome was becoming whole again. But Aurelian was not finished. The West still remained outside imperial control. The Gallic Empire continued ruling Britain, Gaul, and parts of Hispania independently. Once again, Rome faced a dangerous choice: accept permanent division or fight another massive civil war. Aurelian chose war. His army marched westward. By now, his reputation had become legendary. Soldiers viewed him as nearly unstoppable. Enemies feared his speed and aggression. The decisive battle came near Chalons. The fighting was brutal. Roman fought Roman. Legions that once served the same empire slaughtered each other beneath imperial banners. Yet Aurelian's military leadership once again proved decisive. The Gallic forces collapsed. Their emperor surrendered. And for the first time in years, the Roman Empire was reunited. One emperor, one empire. Against all odds, Aurelian had restored Roman unity. It was one of the most extraordinary recoveries in imperial history. The Senate awarded him a title few men could ever claim: Restitutor Orbis, Restorer of the World. Not merely Restorer of Rome, Restorer of the World. That title revealed how Romans saw themselves. Their empire was not simply a state. To many Romans, civilization itself depended on Rome's survival. And Aurelian had saved it. But saving Rome required more than military victories. The empire's economy was collapsing as well. Years of instability destroyed confidence in Roman currency. Inflation spiraled out of control. Corruption infected administration. Trade suffered everywhere. Aurelian attempted major reforms. He reorganized parts of the monetary system and cracked down harshly on corruption. Some officials who abused power were executed. Aurelian tolerated incompetence poorly. His style of leadership was severe, even ruthless. But after decades of chaos, many Romans welcomed strength over weakness. He also focused heavily on restoring imperial authority. The emperor promoted the cult of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. The goal was partly religious but also political. A divided empire needed shared identity. Aurelian understood that military victories alone could not permanently stabilize Rome. People needed symbols. They needed belief. They needed to feel the empire still possessed destiny. In many ways, Aurelian was rebuilding Roman confidence as much as Roman territory. And for a brief moment, it worked. Imagine standing in Rome during Aurelian's triumph. The streets overflowing with crowds, the banners, the cheering, the sense of relief. For years, Romans had watched disaster after disaster unfold. Now their emperor returned victorious. Captured enemies marched through the streets. Treasures from the east filled the procession. And according to tradition, Queen Zenobia herself may have appeared in golden chains. The symbolism mattered enormously. Rome was alive. Not merely surviving alive. The empire that once seemed doomed had reclaimed its strength. Aurelian stood at the center of it all. A soldier emperor forged in crisis. To many Romans, he must have seemed almost superhuman. How could one man accomplish so much so quickly? But history often changes because of individuals willing to act decisively while others hesitate. And Aurelian never hesitated. Yet even at the height of his success, danger remained everywhere. The crisis of the 3rd century had not magically disappeared. Rome still faced enormous problems: economic instability, military exhaustion, political paranoia. And paranoia would ultimately destroy Aurelian himself. In 275 AD, while preparing another campaign in the east, Aurelian was assassinated by members of his own staff. The conspiracy reportedly began because an official feared punishment for lying to the emperor. To save himself, he forged documents suggesting Aurelian planned to execute several officers. Panicked officers struck first. The emperor, who had survived countless battles, was murdered by his own men. It was a tragic end, and painfully Roman. For generations, emperors had lived under constant threat from assassination. Military power created instability as easily as it created strength. Even Rome's savior could not escape that reality. Aurelian died after ruling less than 5 years. Less than 5 years. And yet his accomplishments were staggering. He reunited the empire, defeated major enemies, stabilized frontiers, strengthened Rome's defenses, restored confidence in imperial authority. Most emperors would struggle to achieve one of those things. Aurelian achieved all of them during one of the darkest periods in Roman history. The truth is, without Aurelian, the Roman Empire might not have survived. Historians often focus on famous names like Julius Caesar, Augustus, or Marcus Aurelius. But Aurelian may have been just as important, because he ruled during the moment when Rome stood closest to complete collapse. And unlike many leaders overwhelmed by crisis, he fought back relentlessly. That is why his story still resonates today. Not because Rome was perfect, not because the empire lasted forever, but because civilizations sometimes survive only because a few individuals refuse to surrender when collapse seems inevitable. Aurelian became the embodiment of resilience during catastrophe. A leader willing to impose order upon chaos through sheer force of will. And although Rome's problems would continue long after his death, the empire endured. The Western Roman Empire would survive for another 2 centuries. The Eastern Roman Empire would survive for more than 1,000 years. Aurelian helped make that possible. But perhaps the most fascinating part of Aurelian's story is this. When he became emperor, almost nobody believed Rome could truly recover. The empire appeared too broken, too divided, too exhausted. Many likely assumed fragmentation was permanent. History often feels inevitable in hindsight, but at the time, Rome's future looked hopeless. Then one man changed the trajectory of an empire. Not through speeches, not through promises. Through action. Aurelian marched where others hesitated, he fought where others compromised, he restored fear in Rome's enemies and confidence among its people. That combination changed history. And yet, there is something haunting about the story too. Because Aurelian proved Rome could still produce greatness, even while the empire slowly declined beneath the surface. The walls around Rome remained necessary. Political violence continued, economic instability persisted. Aurelian saved the empire from immediate collapse. But he could not permanently cure every weakness. No single ruler could. Still, that does not diminish what he achieved. In many ways, it makes his accomplishments even more extraordinary. He inherited disaster and gave Rome time. Time to recover, time to survive, time to continue. Sometimes that is what saving a civilization truly means. Not creating perfection forever, but preventing the darkness from arriving too soon. For centuries afterward, the memory of Aurelian endured. The walls bearing his name still surrounded Rome. Historians remembered him as the emperor who reunited the empire. Soldiers admired him as a warrior, statesmen admired him as a restorer. But perhaps ordinary Romans remembered something simpler. Because before Aurelian, Rome looked doomed. After Aurelian, Rome still stood. And in an age when everything seemed to be falling apart, that was enough to make him legendary. So the next time people speak about the fall of Rome, remember this. The empire did not collapse in one moment. Again and again, it stood on the edge of destruction. Again and again, leaders fought desperately to hold it together. And among all those rulers, few mattered more than Aurelian, the emperor who faced invasion, rebellion, economic disaster, political chaos, and the fragmentation of the Roman world, and still refused to let Rome die. Because there was one terrifying moment in history when the Roman Empire truly seemed finished. Rome was dying, until Aurelian returned. If you enjoyed this story about Aurelian and the survival of the Roman Empire, make sure to subscribe for more cinematic history documentaries about legendary emperors, forgotten battles, and the rise and fall of civilizations. History is filled with moments where the world stood on the brink, and extraordinary people changed everything. And some of the greatest stories are still waiting to be told.